acoge a Bram Dewolfs, Medialab Prado acoge a Bram Dewolfs, que trabaja en Bruselas y vive también allí. Es un activista urbano, diseñador cívico, placemaker y experto en educación. En 2014 cofundó Urban Foxes. Es una ONG que trabaja para construir ciudades saludables, inclusivas y co-creativas. Sus actividades se centran en el cruce de la pedagogía urbana, la creación de espacios, la participación de los jóvenes y la educación no formal, tanto a nivel local como de la Unión Europea. De este modo, crea herramientas atractivas, divertidas e impactantes para involucrar a todas las partes interesadas en el proceso de creación de la ciudad. El año pasado fundó la Academy for Urban Action, una forma de investigación basada en la acción con jóvenes que trabajan en educación para la sostenibilidad, temas urbanos y activismo. Trabaja también en la Brige University de Bruselas desarrollando esta metodología experimental. Pues sin más, os dejo con Bram Dewolfs.
Thank you, Sonia, and good evening, everyone here and at home. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for this nice month, although it was quite difficult with the pandemic. I was very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to share with you my results of my work with a very, very long title, a toolkit for urban pedagogy, sustainability education, and youth participation. As you already mentioned in Spanish, I am a teacher, but I'm also an activist, a youth worker, and the president of Urban Foxes. And today I will share with you a bit of my past, present, and future. This is the table of content. I will start with a short introduction. I will tell you something about Brussels. I will also explain to you why it is so important that we think about air quality. I will say something about youth participation, and then I will present to you my toolkit and my game, which I call for now the Air Monsters. Here are some of the youth that I worked with in the past, and they quite inspired me also to develop this tool. This is where I come from, the small country of Belgium, south of Netherlands and north of France. And this is a place where I was born. You probably know it from the beer, Hoegaarden, very close to Tienen, 40 kilometers from Brussels. And maybe I will explain you very shortly how the situation is in Brussels. So as you might know, Belgium is quite a complicated country, and also Brussels is quite complicated. Brussels, which is obviously smaller than Madrid, is divided in 19 different cities. So these are all municipalities with their own mayor. Brussels is, after Dubai, the city with the highest percentage of residents from abroad. So it's the second most cosmopolitan city in the world. What is also very important to look at is the population density. So if you see on the right, you see some of these cities that we know as quite unlivable. But we also have Sint-Joost-de-Noode, Saint-Gilles, Molenbeek, and Koekelberg. These are 4 cities in Brussels, and they are in the top 50 of most dense populated cities in the world. Brussels is not only the capital of Europe, but it's also, at least in 2013, it was the capital of traffic jams. So Brussels was the most congested city. This is quite important to also take this into account concerning the air quality. Of course, it's good to see where it comes from. We hosted in 1958 the World Exposition, and for that, next to culture and leisure, they also built a lot of infrastructure for cars. And below the tunnel, you can see Van den Boeyenans, who was not only the mayor of Brussels, but he was also the director of a concrete factory. So he basically made a lot of profit creating this car infrastructure. It was also the time of aviation, and as you can see, people could still park their car on one of the most pretty squares in the world. This is the person who changed my life 10 years ago. This is a quite well-known philosopher in Brussels, and his name is Philip van Parijs. And he published an article almost 10 years ago now, asking and kind of instigating people to create a protest in order to make Brussels more livable. And he focuses on public space, but also, as you can see, on clean air. So he's quite furious about the situation in Brussels at that time. And he was quite smart in that respect, because he also called out to the younger generation to do something on Facebook. And I made a Facebook group, and an hour later there were 2,000 people wanting to attend. And he was also so smart to call out people to picnic on the streets. So that's what we did. We made a group, we made an event, and we disobediently blocked one of Brussels' most busiest streets. There were over 20,000 people picnicking there. It was a huge success because we were featuring in Chinese newspapers in Brazil, in Mexico, in Al Jazeera. And this is how it looked like before. More than 20,000 cars per day. And thanks to our protests during 3 years, it became this, one of the biggest pedestrian zones in Europe, with green and space to sit and linger and bicycle. So after that, we created an NGO, a non-profit called Urban Foxes. And in the beginning, we focused mostly on public space and on creating some kind of soft spot in a concrete jungle. And our next intervention shows how we did it. We made a mobile pétanque to transform a parking space into a place for children. And then we did many more other projects with public space. We also worked in Valencia, in Barcelona. We did several European training courses with people, showing them how cities function, how we can make cities more attractive for people. We do a lot of co-creation. We also made mobile furniture together with youngsters of Brussels. We also were consultants, as I said, in Valencia, and it was thanks to these European training courses that we kind of found out what we really liked. We liked the city, we like livable cities, but we also like to work with young people to create change, to transform cities. We even brought boats to the city in a kind of playful intervention. We did mobile cinemas. And these are some of the amazing young people that came to our training courses in summer. Well, and now I come to the next chapter. A month ago, I came here to Madrid, and I had lots of things in my mind. Media Lab had an amazing set of projects. If I'm not mistaken, there were 8 projects I could try to contribute to. And after talking to Sylvia from Satellites DIY, I kind of felt inspired because she was working on air pollution. And I decided to create a publication, a guide, not just a guide, a boring guide, but also something that could be fun. And in this publication, I go from very serious to very light. I think it's very important that we also focus on the severity of air pollution, because we often forget how serious this is. So as you can see, I call this publication "It's Not Fair That We Don't Have Clean Air." And here you can see the page of content. I will slowly walk it through with you. Here's a preface of the publication, that we urgently need a wake-up call. And why do we need a wake-up call? Because the air pollution is creating a lot of diseases. It even kills a lot of people. Creates allergies, leukemia, a lot of cancers and heart disease. And I often call this the forgotten pandemic, because if you look at the numbers, this is the yearly death toll. So per year, more than 30,000 people die of the consequence of air pollution, which means that every 2 years, you have the amount of casualties that equals COVID. So what we also see, the UN, this is published by the UN, they really say that it's critical that young people are involved in the matters of global warming and sustainability. So if we look at the ladder of youth participation, which is a kind of an adapted ladder of Hart, it's a famous scientist, and there you can see the different steps into youth participation. And of course, it would be amazing to reach the top level, but often we stay below tokenism, decoration, and even manipulation. And I will show you some examples of this. So the question we have to ask ourselves, how can we include young people in this whole range of challenges? And why young people? Because young people are more likely to suffer from the consequences of global warming. They will be the ones that are stuck with a broken or defect planet. So we often see youth as objects in education. We decide for them. We know what is best as adults. In the better scenario, youth are recipients. Think about the traditional youth work where young kids go and play. They're the recipients of adult activity. But then there is also the last part, and there we could try to collaborate with our youngsters to maybe create more democracy for them. Here is a photo I took from one of the famous protests in Brussels. I will not say too much about it, but I would like to maybe have your thoughts on this later, and I would also like you to have a look on the age of these kids and what they are carrying. So these young children are protesting for cleaner air. Here you see other children protesting for climate change, and some smaller toddler, I think it's about being woke, about being critical. You could say these youngsters are doing something good, it's a good cause. But then if we go a bit further, I mean, we can ask ourselves, are these youngsters being informed? Are they really collaborating? Are they being empowered? And we look back at the photo, and we go a bit further. Then we see another child protesting, asking to leave her clean as God created me. And this is a girl protesting against sex education at school. Here you have children also for the same protest against sex education. Kids, 9, 10 years, going with their parents, or having to go, that we don't know. And then with the last, or the few last ones, children of 4 or 5 years carrying around signs that they haven't made themselves. It even goes so far that in the Black Lives Matter movement, a small colored child was carrying a sign of "fuck the police." Now, what do I want to say with this is that it's a good question that we have to ask ourselves, should children be drawn into protests? Yeah? How I see it, personally, I think a lot of these children are not informed. If we look at this 4-year-old person, we don't know if she really agrees with this. She's maybe not informed. So how I see it is that, for me, a lot of these photos, even if it's for a good cause, air quality, fight against global warming, for me, this is manipulation. We give this child a sign, and we ask, go and protest with us. So you can ask yourself, how can we do it differently? Well, it takes a lot of time and energy to work with young people on these matters. We need to really start informing them in a way that they like to be informed. We have to consult them. We have to involve them in their decisions. We have to collaborate, and then we come to a stage that we really empower young people, and they become the masters of their own life. So this is actually what we should aim for. It's not really easy to get to the highest level, because youth initiated means that these young people are really starting projects on their own. This is really not easy, but at least we can consult and inform them, and we can also let them direct more the project. This is an example of what we did 2 years ago to show you the complexity of working with young people involving a theme. So we worked on a project on placemaking, which means making a place better together with the people. So we went from a whole idea to the execution of a project which was the public space happening. So as you can see, it was more than a year that took to work with these young people on one project. So as I saw in Media Lab, they're also trying to include young people as equal partners. This is something we have in common. This is also what we're trying to do with our new project, the Academy for Urban Action. And there are some tips I could give besides putting a lot of effort, money, and creativity. Everything you do with young people should be fun, triple fun even. Don't be afraid to experiment. Learn from each other. There is no teacher and no student. We all learn from each other. If we do something, we should try to improve the situation for as many people as possible. And co-create and collaborate. And then we can also try to include as many people by engaging them in fun activities. Now, one of the first days I was here, I had a nice talk with Sylvia about her project, Satellites DIY, where she studies together with young people the air quality, and she even built some very nice devices to measure air quality, as you can see them there. And she quite inspired me to work on the matter. And that's why I created this toolkit for urban pedagogy and sustainability education, not only for young people, but also for the teachers and the youth workers. So for me, how does action-based research look like? So you kind of start with a planning, or you can also start with a conclusion or the analysis. In my case, I think it was a subconscious analysis seeing, okay, we have the problem of very bad air, plus we have the problem that young people are not involved. So I started with the analysis, I made a project, I planned it, and then in a few months' time we will go to the action. But this is a never-ending loop, and this is called action-based research. So the main question, like in a thesis, you have to ask yourself a question. So how do we create a tool that guides teachers without restraining them? Me as a teacher, teaching for 20 years already, I never really liked to work with a handbook, because it kind of imprisons you. So what I wanted to create was a guidebook that was inspiring, but also left room for flexibility of the teachers. And that's why I chose something quite special, and I got inspired by this beautiful neighborhood, Las Letras, where I saw something very, very special, a very special ritual. During lunchtime, people walk around the different tavernas and restaurants looking at the different menu del dias. It's something amazing. We don't have this in Belgium, that thing in such a size we don't have. We have the dagschotel, which is something similar, but what I really liked about this is that people, they walk around, they have a look, they think, okay, what do I like today? What do I feel like today? Am I going to have a heavy dinner later, so I will take something light? So I inspired myself on this menu del dia. So that's what I wanted to do, to create a menu del dia for education. So for the teachers out there, they often know that first you start with an initial situational analysis. You look at your group, you try to understand them, you try to kind of guess their level. We can see it as an introduction. And then we go to the main course, which is kind of the master class. You have the time to really work in depth and to reflect on these things. And then we have the dessert, which hopefully is a creative output. Young people who learned about something, they might want to do something with that, create a campaign or a game, as I did. And then we also have the side dishes. When you're really hungry, then you order some more patatas bravas or pimientos de padrón. And these are ongoing projects you can do from start to finish. So, as I said before, these are the different phases. And I also added in my publication that, of course, if the teacher is hungry or he or she feels more creative, they can choose different ones, and they can even create their own. So personally, I like desserts a lot, so I might take 2 or 3 desserts. So Here are some examples of the first course. You can have the classic. If it's nice weather, you can go and have lunch outside. And then there is, of course, the experimental food. And the classic is classic teaching, to my view. So you use illustrations about pollution. You show the children or the young adults photos about trash, about dirty water, etc. And you try to ask the right questions. So what are the right questions? There are a few examples below. So what do you see? Can you describe this photo? Where does this come from? The thing you don't want to do is work inductive. You don't want to say this is pollution. You want to try to let them come to a conclusion and maybe even arrive to a definition. So this is a very classical build-up, but this is definitely not bad. This can take 30, 40 minutes, and you can have a very nice group discussion as an introduction. There is also the outdoor dining. You can say, okay, let's go outside, let's observe, let's take photos. You can collect them in a Google Drive. You can work in groups in different areas. And you ask the young people to take photos of pollution. They will probably take photos of visual things like trash, cigarette butts. They probably won't see these old buildings that have been kind of destroyed by acid rain. But this is something you could point towards. You could say, like, look, this building there, why do you think it's so brown? And then they slowly will start to realize that this is because of the pollution. You can also take them to a higher place, for example, to a skyscraper or a mount, like a higher place where you can look, and there you can see the air pollution better. This is, of course, more explained in my publication. I won't let you read it now, but this is something you can read through. And then there is, of course, the experimental way that you can try to apply, and this is just you try to get your hands on measuring devices. Sometimes the municipality has them, sometimes NGOs have them, and you can lend them out, and then you just give these measuring devices to the young kids without any explanation. This is what we can call the wait-and-see method. Let's see what happens. They will start to ask themselves questions, look at the device. Of course, they will be very curious, no? What you can also do is include gamification. You could say the person or the group that is able to answer my question first, they get 10 points or 1,000 points. I would also recommend you to collect the questions, and you can choose to answer them or keep it for later. And then I would also say guide them to places of contrast, so you can walk with them to a very busy road and see if they notice something. It's highly likely that they will make a link themselves. And I had the experience that they even went to measure next to the car to see what the difference was. So what I wanted to say about this is that it's not a straight line. So we don't learn according to a plan. Sometimes you change, sometimes you get new visions or new impulses. And this brings us to the side dishes. It's always good after your first course to think about side dishes, things you can do during the whole project. And during my years, I saw some very nice projects, and there is the Cycling Tehran of my friend Sadra in Iran. There is the Air Diary. There is a strawberry experiment that they did also here in Media Lab. And then there is the bike, GPS, and device that was also a part of the satellites DIY of Sylvia. So this is an example of my friend biking in Tehran, the capital of Iran. And that was before COVID. He would use a mask on his bike, and he would put a cotton pad, and this is how it looked like 10 days after cycling in Tehran. This is also something you can do with the children or the young people during your project, and do this 10 days in Brussels or in Madrid and see what happens. Another example could be the experiment with the strawberry plants they were also distributed here in Media Lab. And how does it work? Everybody has plants on their balcony, and after a few weeks, you send them to a laboratory, and thanks to this strawberry plant, they can see how polluted the air was. This is also something you can do together with them. Well, then we come to the main course. There are different things you can do. You can invite an expert. You can build your own device, like they did here. You can do a personal or group research project to go deeper in the matter, followed by a creative presentation that they can share the work to each other. Or you can also watch more detailed video material. This is, for example, an amazing example of what you can find if you look for it. These are the blueprints made by Silvia Teixeira that you can just use as an open source material to build their own device. Now, let's go a bit back to the air quality as a concept. Here you see the air quality of today, which is pretty good, thanks to the rain and the wind. But for me, the most difficult question as an activist and a teacher is, what is this? What is air quality? How can we make this visual? And namely, if you focus on the right column, you have all these different chemical components that to a lot of people doesn't say anything. It's quite abstract. So we know that air quality, if it's green, that it's good, orange, it's medium, and red, it's bad, and purple is very bad. But what makes this air quality good or bad? And there we have all these different pollutants, and that's what I try to do with my project, is to give them a face. The AQI is the air quality index, by the way. So how do we give air pollution a face, and how can we involve young people in a stimulating, fun way? These are two questions I asked myself. And then I came on the idea of creating something fun. And the last 20 years, I always ask the same question to my students, the first lesson. I ask them, what do you expect from my classes? And they always, always, always tell me that they want to learn, but they want it to be fun. So this is something that I always remember as a person, as a teacher, and I think adult people are not very different from that. They also like to learn. They also like to have fun. So I thought, okay, what can we do? What works with people? Collaboration works a lot. Mild competition, trying to win against each other. Storytelling, this always works. I think this is rooted very deep in our DNA. We like stories. Huh? If I do Shakespeare with my young people, they like it. Gamification, they like. If it's visually attractive, they also like that. And of course, when they can start to create their own story in the imagination, it's also a very nice way to bring a concept to them. So what did I do? I made these 8 monsters, and I tried to give air pollution a face. So I didn't only give them a face, I also gave them a name. So you can see from left to right, from top to bottom, Choking Charlie, Black Lung Bunny, Punky Carbone, Red Haze Harry, Smelly Sally, Vicious Tiny Petey, Oscar Ozone, and Leadfoot Lewis. Well, you can already see this is kind of what they call a mugshot, a photo they take when you get arrested by the police. This is actually where the story starts. Yeah? So what can you do with these 2 cards? Well, to trigger some of the curiosity with the students, you can hang these posters in the class without saying anything, to just trigger them. Next step, hang a bit more posters, or take one away. And then you can start introducing the story. So the story I imagined was that they were all captured at one point, and they were being trialed at the Court for Human Rights in Den Haag. And during their testimony, we see Vicious Tiny Petey, who escaped. He escaped prison, and he released everyone. And by escaping, he tore up all the files with his teeth and his claws. So all the files were destroyed. So as you can see on the right, this is something you can actually do. You take the information of each pollutant, and you tear it up, you throw it in the class, and you say, okay, let's help this Sherlock Fox to get every file intact again. So they have to puzzle. You can make it as difficult as you want. And they need to find the information of different pollutants. So they need to connect, for example, the information about choking Charlie and put it under the poster. This is one way. Something else I did was I gave them a description, a crime, and a cause. I made what they call trading card games, TCG. These are games like Pokemon or Magic. And I also gave them values. So what you can do with this, the possibilities are almost endless. So you could start a mystery. You could say, for example, someone was killed in a factory with a heart attack. Who did it? And then they have to go and find it. Yeah? So the goal of this first stage is that they collect as many cards as possible. So you can do, for example, a quiz. You can do, for example, you can give them a few cards and they can play top trump. So, for example, if you are the blue monster and you are the pink monster, for example, if you can start, what would you choose from the lower values? Health impact, strength, intelligence, or speed. If you know that the highest one will win. You don't know which card she has. What would you choose, for example, from the blue one? The lowest one is one of these? No, the highest one. The highest. You would choose intelligence, and then you would see that her intelligence is not so high, so you will receive the card of Sonia. Yeah? You have to at least, you could say, play at least 3 rounds. If Sonia needs to ask first, what would you choose, Sonia, if you were be health impact, and then you would win. And then you have to give the card to Sonia. This is how you can play with these cards. And after a while, you will see that these young children also start to read these texts. Yeah? I also included some elements for future games. There is fire, water, air, and earth. And there is also a special option to combine cards. So I'm also thinking of creating new cards, like cars or bad ventilation, that they can use together with the card to have double points. So these are all possibilities. So these are a few of the options that you can play. Top trump cards is what you just did. You take the card and you choose the best that you can do, and you win or lose against each other. You can create mysteries. You can do an active quiz. You can do group battles. You can introduce new cards. You can maybe introduce an activist or global warming card, and then the double lightning battle. So this concludes my presentation. Why to be continued? Because I'm going to translate these cards, and we will test the beta version, and hopefully we can create them. And this will be tested by my youngsters from the Academy for Urban Action, which you can see there in the next photo. These are the first 4 or 5, and we will go to 25 youngsters next year. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
I'm going to just like to say if there's any question. ¿Perdona? Sí. Préndelo, sí. Sí, sí, lo estoy encendiendo. Hola. Bueno, no hablo por aquí, me da igual. ¿Hay alguna pregunta? ¿Alguna pregunta del público? Sí, pues espera un momentito porque te tengo. En este caso sí que necesitamos esto. A ver. Está rojo. ¿Se ha ido la batería? Sí, se va reduciendo. Está rojo. Bueno, si quieres Hola, hola, ¿sí?
What would be the target of your game? Who would you recommend?
The target audience, the age. Yeah.
Yes, and would you like this game to be in schools?
I think that's a good question. I think it can start already from a very early age. Depends how far you want to go. I think even from 5 years, you can introduce these monsters and maybe take a few. You don't have to take all 8. You can focus maybe on the most important ones of that day. but I would say between 6 and 99 years old. I think also older people would like to play with this. I think if I look at myself, I didn't know all these different components. I think this can work for everyone. But I think the whole sequence, the whole package, this would be with youngsters between 12 and 18, for example. I think they will really enjoy to work with this for a few weeks at least. Yeah.
And if I'm allowed another one, can the kids make an impact themselves, or do they need to collaborate with their teachers? And
you mean when they create the dessert, the output?
as
you
individual,
mean?
can they make make a change?
We have the tendency to always point at the individual, to always tell what you can do. I think there is definitely truth behind that. We also have to think about our own impact. But it's also important that they know what is going on, that industry pollutes a lot, that the biggest part of air pollution comes from the cars. And these are things that we often don't tell them. Is it because of the car lobby? We don't know. Is it because air pollution is invisible? I don't know. I think kids can do more than just improve their own impact. They can also create real change by doing an action to sensitize people, like what Sylvia did here with this beautiful air measuring device, is showing people how good or how bad the air is. I think it's very important to tell people what the health situation is. But I think young people can definitely make an impact. We see it also if you look at Greta Thunberg. I mean, she created a global movement. So I think yes, but we shouldn't manipulate them into doing things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one question would be, if someone wants to use that in education, how can they get these cards? What kind of license? Are they open source?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So now this is what I created now is a kind of beta version. I will translate it both to Dutch, Spanish, and in English. And the goal is actually to make a printable version that people can go to our website and to the website of Media Lab, and they can print these cards and they then cut them out themselves. So this will be an open source license. Yeah, there is a chance that we might print it and that we ask a small contribution for the fabrication, but this game will be free to download, hopefully in a few weeks to a few months. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So thanks, Bram. We hope to have an exhibition of these results. I don't know, maybe in June, July, I'm not too sure.
Okay.
And then maybe if you are not here, your masters will be around.
Thank you.
And people will have the chance. I don't know if to play with them because COVID, but at least see them.
See.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.